my last video on walking bass, we looked at the basic 12-bar blues chord progression. Over the top of that, we looked at some very basic walking ideas using major and minor triad bass lines. From there, we went on to look at 30 different ways to walk from chord 1 to chord 4. If you remember, we used 4 different methods to get from chord 1 to chord 4. So number 1 was scale, number 2 was arpeggio, number 3 was chromatic lines or chromatic approach notes, and number 4 was combining all of those 3 different methods. This week we're going to have a look at the 12-bar jazz blues chord progression, which is a little bit more involved. There's a few more chords going on in this structure. We're remaining in the 12-bar structure. Some of the chords are quite different. They also employ what's known as a secondary dominant idea. And before you run away screaming, all the secondary dominant is a bit like dominoes. One chord just wants to lead to the next chord. It's really as simple as that. We'll have a little look at voice leading and why this is the case that one chord wants to move to the next chord. So just to recap 12-bar blues, remember the standard, the really straightforward 12-bar blues, the first 4 bars are on chord 1. By the way, the chord I'm using here is a dominant 7th chord. Parent scale for a dominant 7th chord is the Mixolydian scale, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, major 6, flat 7, octave, which of course is the good old rock and roll scale. Because of that major 6 and flat 7. The chord I'm using is an open position chord, which basically means the major 3rd there, I'm playing an octave up, which is now major 10th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's our major 3rd. There's our flat 7th. And there's our open chord. And notice also that the flat and 7th against the major 3rd gives this lovely tritone. Our friend Diabolus and Musica. A very crunchy dissonant sound that would normally resolve back onto a major chord like that. However, this is the blues and jazz as well, so they tend not to resolve. So 12-bar blues, we have 4 bars chord 1, the next 4 bars, 2 bars of chord 4, followed by 2 bars of chord 1, last 4 bars, chord 5, chord 4, chord 1, twice. Also notice that when I was playing chord 5 and chord 4, this is the closed version of that dominant 7th chord. So the 3rd is now next to the root, and above that is the flat 7th, but we still have that tritone in there. Our good old friend Diabolus and Musica. So, what is different about the 12-bar jazz blues chord progression? We still have a 12 bars, but there's a lot more going on within it. Quite a few of the bars themselves have 2 chords within those bars, so there's quite a bit of difference there. The first 4 bars we have chord 1, going to chord 4, going back to chord 1. We then have chord 5 minor, which would normally be a dominant, which is major with a flat and 7th. Minor going back to chord 1. So that's 2 chords in that bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead of thinking these as chord 5 and chord 1, another way of looking at this, and this is where our secondary dominants come into play, that chord 5 there could be looked upon as chord 2 of chord 4, which is where we're going in bar 5. So 2, 5, 1, which is really chord 4. This is known as tonicization. It's a kind of temporary fix, as it were, that makes chord 4 sound like it's chord 1, but just briefly. Chord 5 minor going to chord 1. Now we're into bar 5, chord 4. And again, another interesting turn of events here. We go to sharp 4 diminished. So notice the only thing that's changed from that chord 4 is the root has been sharpened. And we now have a minor third against a diminished seventh. And the whole thing is built on minor thirds. So we have root, minor third, upper minor third. We get our flattened fifth. There's that tritone again. Minor third again, we get a diminished or double flatted seventh. A favourite with horror films. From there, bar 7, we're back to chord 1 again. Bar 8, we go from chord 3, which is a minor 7 flat 5 chord. To chord 6, which is a dominant chord. And again, that particular group of chords, or this particular group of notes, really is hinting at a harmonic minor progression, because 2 of harmonic minor will give us that flat 5, minor 7 flat 5 chord, and 5 will give us the dominant chord, like that. So that's 3, 6, going to 2, minor. Again, this is a very common chord progression in a lot of jazz standards. 3, 6, 2. From there we go to chord 5 on bar 10, and bar 11 and 12 we have 2 chords per bar. We have in bar 11 1, 6, and then bar 12 2, 5. And you can hear the way the chords are leading one to the next. What's going on here, if I go back to chord 3, if you listen to that flat 7th, when I play chord 6, that 7th falls to the 3rd. Now I go to chord 2, that 3rd will drop to the 7th of chord 2 minor. There's the minor 7th, the minor 3rd above, and that flat 7th will drop to the 3rd of chord 5. And that's what secondary dominants are all about, one chord leading to the next. When we're using walking bass lines, we can pick up some of these ideas and really follow that voice leading through. That kind of effect. Our very final bar, we have 2, 5, and then we're back to 1 again. Okay, so let's have a look at a walking bass line that covers all of those chords. And again, we're going to be looking at walking on the spot. The walking bass line itself is just going to stay in one area of the neck, so we're using 1 finger per fret. What that will give us is a good sense of pitch direction and also getting from one chord to the next chord in an efficient way. So just a quick reminder of the chords that we have. We have chord 1, chord 4, going back to chord 1 again, then chord 5, 1, 4, sharp 4, chord 1, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. And notice how all of those chords are right underneath my fingers. Okay, so let's connect them up with a walking line. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what was going on within that walking bass line. First of all, on chord 1, which is C7, starting on a C. First thing I did was start to go up the scale and then skip up from the third to the fifth. So that's half scale, half arpeggio. So we're already starting to mix and match there. Into bar 2, F7. 2 repeated notes. Going up to the third via chromatic passing note. By the way, these repeated notes are a very common feature in a lot of walking bass lines. They really give a rhythmic push to the line itself. That sort of feel. Very common technique used in a lot of jazz walking bass lines. Okay, from there, straight down the scale into G minor 7. There's the minor third, so that's arpeggio. Up to the C. Chromatically down into bar 5, which is F7. From there, straightforward triad, so arpeggio, into chord sharp 4, diminished. So I'm arpeggiating up. Now from there I land onto the third of C, or major 10th at this point. Now what I'm doing there, I'm coming down the second inversion of C, but backwards. So we have a triad. The first inversion of that triad would be to start on the third note, 3, 5, 1, or 3, 5, 1. And the second inversion starts from the fifth of the triad, 1, 3, 5, 5, 1, and there's our third. So all I was doing was playing that inversion on the way back down. And that's the fourth, and then takes us into chord 3, E minor 7 flat 5. So I'll highlight the fact that there's that flat 5 in there. To A7, which is now chord 6. From the A7, there's the A, but I come down via the minor third of the D7, D minor 7. So I'm anticipating that D that I know is on its way. This is bar 9, D minor 7, chord 2. Straight up the minor triad, and then chromatically onto the G. Upper major third, so partly an arpeggio, then up the scale, and then down C7. So again I'm using the scale, and notice how that the third of G is now changed into the 7th of C. Down the scale to A, and again using that minor third to take me to the D, chromatically up to the G, then chromatically down into the C. There's a classic 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. 6, 2, 5, 1. So there we go. That's walking on the spot. Again, we've used all 4 methods of getting from one chord to the next chord. We've used scale, we've used arpeggio, we've used chromaticism in either chromatic lines or chromatic approach notes, and we've combined some of those ideas as well, using anticipations or thinking about what's coming next. And this is really where pitch direction comes into its own. And by walking everything in one spot this way, it just gets you a bit more disciplined into thinking exactly what's underneath your fingers. And of course, all these ideas you can start to spread to the rest of the neck and open the neck out and think about higher pitches, especially when you're playing along with a jazz band, say for instance, and the soloist is really going for it. You can start getting these walking lines up into higher pitches to really increase the tension of the moment. These are all sort of situation dependent, as it were. Anyway, I do hope that's been of use to you, and I hope you've enjoyed having a look at all these different ways of walking from one chord to the next. If so, please like and subscribe, and don't forget there's Patreon as well, which will give you 25% off one-to-one bass lessons. Please feel free to hit me up for a bass lesson at any point, or please feel free to get in contact with me if you're interested in a one-to-one bass lesson. And don't forget, the first lesson is a free consultation. You've certainly got nothing to lose by that. My name's Pete. This is The Infinite Bass. Hope you've enjoyed watching this, and I'll see you next time.